Again, I try and use the whole cilantro. A few extra stalks there. All right. So we've got some extra for our garnish, and the rest is chopped up and ready to go into the soup. We're going to cut up a jalapeno. So your jalapeno, totally optional. If you want to go for the whole thing, you can, or you can do half, or you can do a quarter, whatever your tolerance is. We did a whole one earlier. Nice spice, nice flavor, not overpowering, but it's still nice. So we've got a really good looking, our mushrooms are starting to sweat really nicely. In the meantime, Kelly can jump back to my Dulce Leche. So this, see, we got some darker spots in there. So it's a bit tricky. That can get kind of clumpy. So we'll try and incorporate that back in. I might turn my heat down just because I'm not stirring it the whole time. And eventually the whole thing will catch up to itself and caramelize together. So we're gonna chop up our jalapeno now. And if you wanna cut your spice off of your jalapeno, how do we do that? How do we keep the spice from being too much? What's our trick? These seeds and that membrane is your spiciest part. So you can cut that out. If you handle jalapenos a lot with your hands, like if you were to dig this out with your finger, chances are your finger is going to start to feel a little bit warm as the day goes by. So you can use a knife to kind of slice out your seeds. And then you have a nice jalapeno. Let me get rid of that spot. And so we're going to chop this up. The other trick is don't spray your board. If you have a spray nozzle for your water, don't spray your board because you'll end up spraying it, make it that into a cloud of spice, and then you'll breathe that spice in and be coughing a bit because it's an irritant. So some jalapenos. That looks yummy. So we've kind of almost got those like caramelizing in there as well. So we're gonna add, let me turn the heat down just a little bit because I got to chop up my garlic still. So we'll peel the garlic. And what's our trick to getting our garlic off, that garlic smell out of our hands? How do we get rid of that? As soon as we're done. How do I get rid of that smell? Peanut butter, okay. Stainless steel, yeah, rub your faucet. Massage a spoon. Whatever you have, stainless steel. Most of us have stainless steel faucets, so just rub your faucet. Okay, so we're gonna mince this up too. Keep your fingers away. All right. Again, get that as small as it's minced. If you have a garlic press, that makes it even easier. But if you don't, then you can chop it. Okay. Taste. All right. Now we will add this to our mushrooms, which have kind of even done a little bit of browning. So we're going to add diced onion. So we've got that. We've got our green onions going in. If you want to save some of your green onion for your garnish and for the end, so you can leave a section of that. And they're rolling off my cutting board. I see my dulce de leche is boiling. I'll stir that a little bit. Okay. Get some cilantro and jalapenos in there. So I left a little bit of cilantro and a little bit of green onions, and I'll put my garlic in. And then we're going to get our spice. Okay. So we have some spices. So this has paprika and it has, what else do we have in here? We have cumin, oregano, paprika, cayenne, maybe if the cayenne is in there. So we're going to add that to our mix. Okay. And we're going to have salt and pepper. That was in your spice blend as well. And again, you can always add salt and pepper as you need to. So we're going to cook this on low heat. So I'll turn my heat down a little bit. We'll cook it on low for about 10 minutes. All right. Pick up all my onions. So back to our dulce de leche. So starting, well, we see we've got a little bit of that burned edge. So again, it really does take the time you should dedicate your time on it rather than let it sit, but we should be able to manage and get it to go. It's the heat, right? If you go hot heat, it's going to burn even faster. It's a slow process. So slowing it down. And if it gets lumpy, which it might, then you can actually blenderize it. That's going together. So we're gonna get our, yeah.
Your question about the caramel.
Oh, so if I make caramel from scratch, it's water and sugar, and then at temperature rise, then we get that caramelization of the sugar and water. This one, sweetened condensed milk, has milk in it. So it's still caramelizing the sugars, but it's not just sugar and water, but similar. So you're not going to have the same taste. It's going to have a milky, kind of a milky taste to it, but it's still going to turn into a caramelized, nice, thick consistency. Coconut milk, sweetened condensed milk. That sounds great. That would be nice and flavorful. All right. Yeah. So Chantal, I tried aquafaba again this semester and still got to perfect that, but we're getting closer. And for anybody that's not familiar with aquafaba, that is a chickpea juice that you turn into like a meringue. So we were adventurous enough to give it a shot, and we're going to keep perfecting it. So that's my perfecting work for the summer. All right, so now we can get together and work on our, I'm going to dump all these mushrooms together because eventually those will go in. I don't know if I had to add my mushrooms in there yet. Add diced tomatoes. No, gotta wait. Okay, let's get our cheese bread going. So we have an egg, a 1/4 cup of butter, cheese. So what we're going to do for this is we're going to melt our butter and, oops, I got a couple of different. So you have, oh, I got cheese bread. Sorry, cheese bread milk. Crepe is the other one. So cheese bread milk. We're going to put that in our pan. And we're going to put butter, which is, flip my recipe.
What's going on in the pan?
Which pan?
Pan.
I have 3 pans cooking. So, oh, my dulce de leche is turning brown, but it's also burning on the bottom.
Oh, the new pan.
The new pan is going to be my cheese bread. All right, so we're going to put, so 1/4 cup of butter in with the milk. That started melting already for me. So we're gonna turn the front on. I've got that going and it's gotta be on high heat. And the reason is so that you're not reducing and losing some of that volume. So I need to do a couple tablespoons of water. So this is a math question for everybody. If 1/3 of a cup of water is 5.5 tablespoons, how many tablespoons is 1/2 of 1/3 of a cup of water? Also 1/6. So if that's like too much thought, so think about 5 is 2.5, right? So if we cut, that's kind of easy. So 2 tablespoons plus 2 teaspoons. That makes it a little easier. All right, so we're gonna get this to melt. And we've got our butter, our water, our milk, and we need to put salt, which is cheese bread salt. So we put the salt in there. And I will grab my spoon. We're gonna turn this up to high to get it to boil really quick. I have a cup of tapioca flour ready to go. I stir up my sweetened condensed milk. And we do have our oven preheated to 375. If anybody did not preheat your oven, you want to preheat your oven to 375. Now, what's so great about Brazilian cheese bread? Everybody says, wow, this is the greatest stuff. But what is one of the benefits? What's the plus to Brazilian cheese bread? It is gluten-free. So we use tapioca flour, which is gluten-free. Now, if you cannot find tapioca flour, then you probably want to you could use coconut flour. It's a little bit more challenging because it will absorb, coconut flour tends to absorb the water more. And it also has that coconutty taste. So you kind of have to play with your recipe a bit. The other alternative, because this is really close to what we would call cornstarch. So cornstarch could be an alternative to tapioca flour, because what is tapioca? Tapioca is cassava. So you could technically use cornstarch in place of tapioca flour. But again, it's kind of play with the recipe a little bit. So you're going to get your margarine, your milk, and your salt and your butter up to a boil. And then we'll pull it off the heat and we're going to add our flour. So it's just about there. And the reason we don't want to get it, like let it continue to boil and let it go longer is because you're just going to lose some of that moisture. So this is perfect. We add it up to a boil. I'll take it off the heat and I'm going to add my flour. So it kind of reacts a lot like cornstarch when you put it in there. Okay. And you're going to mix this up until we can get it kind of smooth consistency. And then we're going to let it sit for a little bit.
No.
The egg is not in there yet. So you're going to put the egg in there after we let this rest. So we'll combine this. Okay, so it kind of should combine together. Makes that nice. You could run it around your pan. Now here's the nice thing. If you are mixing it more and more and more, what's the one thing it's not going to ever do? Because it doesn't have gluten in it. Won't get tough because you don't have gluten. So you don't have to worry about that handling and causing it to get tough. If it was flour, we'd have to like really reduce the amount of handling that we have. Okay, so that's going to sit for 10 minutes. Let me timer that one. Oops. And we'll go back to our okay, so that's going to sit. that over here on the, here is my sweetened condensed milk. So it's turning brown. It's gotten a little bit lumpy. All right. And then our mushrooms, come back over to our mushrooms. We're bouncing from pot to pot tonight. We're checking our mushrooms. So they've kind of softened. You can kind of tell your onions are softening them up a little bit. You can still go a little bit longer. It's getting a nice consistency. It shouldn't burn on the bottom. So keep your heat not too hot. You know, just enough to keep it sauteing and softening up. In the meantime, we've got our bread is going to have your cheese and our egg. So what I'll do is I'm going to crack my egg into my bowl. So question on mushrooms. Should you wash mushrooms before you use them? Remember, they're grown in, it's a decaying composition that they're growing in. So should we wash them? Mushrooms are about 90% water. So if we wash them, or if they soak in water, then what happens? Yeah, so you don't want to necessarily wash them in water or soak them in water. You actually can find mushroom brushes at specialty stores. They'll have mushroom brushes that will allow you to kind of brush off the dirt. But ultimately, all the mushrooms that are grown in the US that were purchased are safe. They make sure that they are grown safe, and so you're safe to eat them. So that's a good thing. Where do mushrooms grow? How do we grow them? Sorry, I'm just putting my chicken broth together with my water so it starts to kind of melt. But where do we grow mushrooms? Besides in the grass in the yard, which those are not the ones that you should eat, but where do we grow them? How are they grown? They are grown in the dark. So you don't have to have a whole lot of energy to grow mushrooms, which is nice. You know, they don't have to have light. They don't have to have a whole lot of heat. So it's nice to be able to grow them without all that. 63% of the white mushrooms, those little button mushrooms, are grown in Pennsylvania, but all 50 states grow mushrooms. Sorry, we're bouncing, Kelly. So this is probably about ready to go with my, ready to add my tomatoes. And we have a can of diced tomatoes. So we're going to add the diced tomatoes. And actually you can, let's see. It was what smelling? Okay, that's an interesting. So I would say that it's probably close to like, I grew up where there was cows and I loved cow smell. So I guess we all have our, like that different variation of what the smells, but I can imagine because it's decomposing to a certain degree, you know, you have that smell that you have. What I'm doing here is I'm just separating the tomatoes from the juice so that you can, and you could put it through a strainer. If you lose some of your tomatoes, that's fine. But that'll help keep your little bit of your moisture in your soup. I'll wash my container. That's going to be for my crepes. So we'll get as much of that juice out as possible. Oops, sacrificed a few tomatoes. Okay, so we're going to add our diced tomatoes. And we're going to cook it another 10 minutes. So we added those. And we'll go 10 minutes. So I got to go, let's see, I'll watch the clock. 10 minutes. Get those to cook. All right, so that's looking good. Our caramel, ooh, it's getting thick. My heat's at 2 and it's still getting really, really fast. If for some reason it started to get really thick on you, you can add a little bit of milk or a little bit of water to try and thin it down a little bit. So remember, it's that darkening is definitely what you want. You don't want the chunks of super dark in there, but you want to get it dark because right now it's caramelizing. Okay, so we'll let that sit just a little bit longer. And our cheese bread has 6 minutes to go. So I have some fun facts for us while we're kind of sitting around and waiting. So because mushrooms are sustainable, right? They're grown in dark places. They don't have to have a whole lot of light. They don't take up a lot of they don't take a lot of space. We can actually grow in 1 acre of land. You can actually grow 1 million pounds per year of mushrooms. So you can actually take 1 acre and grow 1 million pounds of mushrooms in a year. They're energy efficient because they grow in the dark. 1.8 gallons of water is all you need for 1 gallon of mushrooms. Now, mushrooms are naturally have this one vitamin present that is natural, and it's one of the only vegetables, or it's not even considered a vegetable, it's a fungus. So it's the only type of a vegetable that we might consider a vegetable, if you wanted to call it that has natural what in it. It's a vitamin, but it would not necessarily make a whole lot of sense because this vitamin comes from something that we need somewhere else, not in the dark. So what vitamin would be in mushrooms naturally that we would expect to come from something outdoors? So yes. So vitamin D we know is the sunshine vitamin, right? But it is natural in mushrooms. So they're one of the few, if not very limited choices of vitamin D type of a food. Let's see what else I have here. Mushrooms are decomposers. So they start out as a fungal spore, and that's why people are kind of hesitant sometimes with mushrooms, but you can actually do a lot of fun home mushroom production now. So we now have the ability to grow them, like here in Hawaii, we can grow shiitake mushrooms on a log. You can buy a log and it has shiitake mushrooms. One of the things that we're going to be working on next semester, so keep an eye open for this, is we're going to have a mushroom growing webinar so that we can hopefully start some mushrooms from scratch here and be able to share that with you. All right, so my dough, I'm going to pull that a little bit early based on our timing. So here's our Brazilian cheese bread dough. And what I need to add to that is my egg. So I will get a fork so that we'll kind of blenderize that up a bit. And remember, I always crack my egg over another bowl that I'm not going to use and not crack it right into the container, just because if you get a shell, you don't want to have to fish out your shell in the mix of your dough. So we're going to add our egg. And we're going to add our cheese. And is both cheeses together, mozzarella and Parmesan. And then we will mix our flour mixture in with our egg. Turn off. And it should kind of look like cottage cheese, so it should get kind of lumpy. Don't worry if it looks like it's not mixed fully. It is going to be a bit lumpy. Your cheese won't be melting at this point. some of the traditional cheese bread recipes are more, they put them in a blender and blenderize it, and then it's more of a pourable batter. So this is a recipe that we allowed you to not have to worry about a blender. So that's kind of a adapted recipe so that you don't have to blenderize it. Okay, so you should have it nice, good consistency. And now you're ready to make it and scoop it into balls. You're going to put it on a ungreased cookie sheet, because remember, there's enough butter in there so that it will not stick to your pan. So if you want to take a clump of it, and we'll put that, kind of put it into a ball. And you should probably get anywhere from, what do we have, 7 last time? So we can do 7 or 8, depending on how big you want them. If you start getting to the point where they're too big, you can take out some and use it on the next one. JR's recipe. Oh, Kelly, do you know where this recipe came from? All recipes. So not a JR recipe. I don't know. Is that Junior?
Yeah.
Oh, Junior. He is our Brazilian TA, that he was a TA in my Fishin' 181. No, he actually hasn't made it before. So we were talking about it yesterday, and he said that he hadn't made it before, so he couldn't give me any tips. But we did talk about, because I tried this at home and tried to use coconut flour, and it did not work. So coconut flour is just too absorptive. And I think if I would have cut the flour content back, it might have been better. But because it was just too absorptive, and it was like crumbly, it did not look like this at all. Rice flour, mochi, it might work as well. I mean, it's the similar consistency. So it's the whole recipe purpose is gluten-free. So you could truly use that. But like I said, the cornstarch is another option because it's really close consistency to cornstarch. And there's your cheese breads. Wash my hands real quick. No grease. There sure is. That one just requires you to get a blender. So that's the reason we didn't do that one, because yes, there is here's your tapioca flour, and there is the easy Brazilian cheese bread. So there is a recipe right on the back. So I'm going to try that one at home and see how that one comes out. But this is another alternative way of doing it. So we will get our bread in there, and that's going to cook for about 15, 20 minutes. So we'll start out with 15. And if we have to go up, we can definitely go up. And we'll come back down. All right, start. 10 minutes done. Okay, thanks, Devin. So we now have our mushrooms looking really yummy. So this one is ready to add. We're going to add now our vegetable stock, our tomato juice that we had left over. And now my vegetable stock. So if you use vegetable stock or you use bouillon, whatever you want to do, sometimes you can melt these cubes in hot water. If not, eventually it's going to melt down in the mixture. So that was 2 cups plus 2 bouillon cubes. Okay. And we're going to let that come to a boil. And then we'll add the rest of the mushrooms to that mixture. And then eventually we're going to let that sit for another 10 minutes. So timing wise, this might be a little bit longer than what you're with us tonight, but we can definitely keep you updated on your timing. So my dulce de leche, there's my hot pad. So yeah, that one got a little thick. but it's still, if I wanted to puree it with an immersion blender, I could. If you wanted to thin it, like I mentioned before, you can add some milk to it. If I have, I can show you what you are shooting for. And again, it might be the fact that you just need to be stirring it the whole entire time. And it firms up. So remember, this is caramel, so it's going to firm up as you go. So this one, it was liquidy at one point, and as it got cooler, it firms up and makes that caramel. So as far as the spreadability, you would either add milk or it's hot. So when you're making your crepes, your caramel should be nice, kind of thin consistency to be able to pour it or spread it on your crepe. So yeah, we'll add, because we don't have any milk here in the house tonight, we're gonna add a little bit of water just to thin it down. And then I'll heat that back a little bit and see how we do. But we'll let that, I don't even have my burner on, so I'm just gonna let that sit and see how we do. Okay. Crepe batter. We need an egg, we need milk, we need salt, and then we have butter. So we are going to use, a new pitcher to put our, first off, put your flour. So you should have a baggie of flour, which I have here. And we're going to put our flour and our salt together. And I just whisked that together. So flour, salt, C for crepe. And we're going to whisk that together. So Devin, if you grab me a whisk. Well, Devin's grabbing me a whisk. What nationality is crepes? Where did they originate? Does anybody know? So we got a fun fact here. Where did crepes originate? France, exactly. So Brittany, France is where they originated. And they, as in most of our food items today are purely accidental. So this woman is in her kitchen and she's getting ready and she's trying to do things in the kitchen, as we all do at home, right? And you have a million things happening. So she's made porridge, and she made porridge and it was buckwheat porridge. And so she had it sitting on the counter and she forgot about it. Or she, no, sorry, that's the Dulce de Leche. So she's spilling buckwheat porridge into a pan and realizes, wow, this is pretty neat. So that's where crepes really came from, was the fact that they were it's an accident. The Dulce de Leche is also an accident where somebody actually forgot, like what we were trying to do on ours was to try and do too many things at one time. And they were actually doing, left it in the pan, left it too long, and it started turning caramelized. So they realized, wow, this is pretty tasty. So that's how Dulce de Leche began. So we are going to use margarine. Sorry, this is butter, and it melted some. But if you wanted to get it melted just a little bit, so probably 30 seconds in the microwave or less, and we'll see how that goes because there's not a whole lot to it. We're going to melt that. And we're going to add to that the water, which is going to be a half a cup of water, right? Or a quarter cup of water. Okay, so we're going to do a quarter cup of water. We've got a quarter cup of milk, and we have an egg as well. So we're going to crack my egg. Perfect. So we've got melted butter, 30 seconds. We're going to add some water. We're going to add our milk. And I'm going to crack my egg over the bowl. And we are going to whisk that up before I add it to my milk mixture. And it talked about putting it in a bowl. So the reason I put it into a measuring cup, it just made it easier to pour into the pan when I'm ready to do my crepes. So we're going to add this a little bit at a time and mix it. So remember, we're dealing with flour here. Flour has gluten, so it can toughen up a bit if we over mix it, but we still want it a smooth batter. All right. So if you talk to somebody who does crepes, like in a, oops. So there's a La Creperie, which is a food truck that does crepes. So if you talk to somebody and ask them how to say what we say crepe, it's actually like crepe in French. So I took 4 years of French in high school. Do I speak much French now? Not much. Not the use of French too often. But we used to use a crepe pan that was more of like, it almost looked like the backside or the upside down of a saute pan. So it was a smoother surface and you poured it on top of the back. And then that was how you would take care of that crepe. Now with us today, we're going to use a regular saute pan. And we are going to, I'm going to target this burner one more time. I think it was hot earlier because of my stove. All right, so we're going to use, just don't like using that small of a burner. Hang on, I'm going to play with my burner a bit. I just can't get it to kick on. So let's go with this one. I did it about medium heat, and you really want to get your pan hot enough so that you're going to have that nice cooking surface. You can have a little bit of oil on the side. So I have a little brush with oil. So I'm going to let this heat up. I'm going to come back to my soup. And my Brazilian cheese bread has about 7 minutes. So I've kind of let this cook and simmer down and soften up. I also have limes. So we're going to add the lime juice after we cook this. So I'm going to wash my limes. And I can cut those. And those will be ready to go. So we'll just squeeze those into the pot. Move this out of the way. We'll get ready to add our mushrooms. Okay. You're going to add your mushrooms. And we're going to stir. So we're going to cook this for about 10 more minutes. And this, so right now it looks like it's filling up my pot, but eventually, remember, these are going to shrink down and you'll be pleasantly surprised that you're not going to have this giant oversized mushroom sitting in your pot. So we're just going to let that cook for a bit. I've got 6 minutes on my Brazilian cheese bread, 5 minutes. So that'll be ready before we are done. And I will check my heat on my pan. One of the ways I can check is just to kind of see if it gets a little bit of a sizzle. So I also am going to grease it just a little bit. Super light. They actually have these really neat tools that it's like you spread your oil across the pan. So this made, let's look in our measuring cup. So it makes about a cup. If you want to try for 3, you can. If you want to try for 2, they're going to be a little bigger. But if you're looking at a smaller size pan, you probably want to try 3 of them. So we're going to split the batter into 3. And when we pour it in, you'll see how it comes together. So I'm going to heat, that's off. Heat this up, let it heat up just a little bit longer before I get that going. I think what I can do is squeeze my, go back to my soup, squeeze my limes. And there's no juice. Well, You know, sometimes you get lucky, sometimes you don't. There's like the very dry lime, very pulpy. All right. Oh, a little bit more over here. Yeah, that's crazy. There's not much there. You can roll them on the counter. You can put them in the microwave for 10 seconds, you know, on high. There's a lot of tricks to the trade, but that one does not have a lot more pulp than juice. Let's try. And the nice thing about limes, well, there's not a whole lot on this one, is they don't have much, if any, seeds. So you're typically not going to have to worry about the seeds. But you do want to get one that's juicy. That's the trick. All right. Let's see. We can squeeze out this guy. So kind of go back to mushrooms too. I'm kind of bouncing all over the place tonight. There's 300 edible species of mushrooms. There's 30 of them that have been domesticated, and there's 10 that have grown pretty much commercially. I think with all my lemon or all my limes, I think I'll have enough. Not that one. We'll try. Thanks, Jesse. So we have 10 of them are pretty much regulars. So if we think about the most popular mushroom is that white button mushroom. That's the most common. And then you have your crimini, which are baby bellas that we're using tonight. You have your portobellas, which a lot of people use as a meat substitute because they're nice and dense. They're great for grilling. Great for, you could use them in this soup as well. I actually use those to make a test run at home. Wonderful option. I just cut them in chunks. Enoki mushrooms are also an option. Shiitakes, which are grown on, usually grown on a log, and they're also known as oak fungus. They're woodsy flavored. So you might have that as an option. And you've got your beech, which is what we have tonight. If they're eaten raw, here's an interesting fact. Don't eat your white ones raw, they're bitter. But if you cook them, they're sweeter. We have king trumpet, which is like a big thick stem. We have black trumpet, which is rich, smoky when they're dry. We have chanterelle, wild mushrooms. So we have a lot to pick from. So really it's your opportunities are endless. So we did get about 1/8 of a cup from, and we needed a 1/4 cup, right? Well, we did a half a recipe. So no, we're right on 1/8 of a cup. So after squeezing and squeezing, you know, it's like squeezing blood out of a turnip, right? You just don't do it. So we're almost done with the Brazilian cheese bread. Our soup is looking yummy. So your mushrooms have shrunk a bit. And now let's give I've got 30 seconds and I'll pull out that. I need to go crank this a little bit hotter. I'm targeting so it's going to make that nice, we're close on our heat. You want your heat to be hot. This is not going to be like pancakes where you're going to see the bubbles because this doesn't have any kind of leavening in it. So it's just the flour, eggs, milk, water, salt, and butter. So there's no leavening, baking soda, baking powder in here. So you're not going to see the bubbling going on that you might be used to. So let me pull out my cheese breads real quick. Oh, they actually probably need to go a little bit longer. So they look nice and they're starting to toast up a bit. So we're going to go just probably, I'll shoot for 3 more minutes. Yeah. Bake back up to 375. Oops. And we'll do a timer for like 3 minutes. Okay. So I think my crepe pan is ready. I'm going to pull that little test run out of there. All right. So here's your batter. Here's our trick. This is not the, it takes a couple of times. If you want to, if you're thinking like, okay, I'm going to be ready for this and you lose your first one, that's totally okay. So we're going to pour in a bit of the batter. And it's pretty hot, so I can actually go a little bit more. And what we're going to do is try and move this around before it starts to stick. Get a little bit more in there. your twirl in your pan. They actually have some really neat spreaders that you can buy. Sorry, I'm flipping my pan away from the camera. So we're going to try and get it to go all the edges before going down. We can fill in those little gaps. Okay. So we're shooting for filling that bottom of your pan. Whoops, and it's sliding. So we'll let that cook. So you can kind of see that it pulls away from the edges. If you look over on the edges of the pan where the dough is, it's kind of lifting a bit. You can kind of see it here. It's lifted up, it's curling up. We're gonna let it cook a little bit longer just so it browns on the bottom. And then you have two options. If you want to flip it by doing a total flip of your pan, you know, like where you shake it and flip it, you are welcome to try. It's like flipping a pizza dough in the air, you know, get talent, you can do that. Otherwise, you can use a spatula, which I have had. I can use actually even, we got a spatula coming. So we can actually turn it after it gets, we're not looking for bubbles, but we're going to turn it a little bit brown. So we're going to let that brown up a bit on the edges. It's got to go a little bit more. So I'll give you a peek. So it's still blonde. We want to get that little bit of brown. Soup's cooking. I'm going to stir that. Our cheese bread's almost done. So our soup is just, those mushrooms are softening up a bit, and our cheese bread's got 30 seconds. And our caramel that we created is close. So I've got it. So again, so it should kind of shake off your, if you can get it to lift, and you can flip it. So I could have let it go on a little bit longer to brown up a little bit more, but we'll let that bottom side go. And again, it's really just pouring it in and then moving your pan around enough to get that to, let's see. There we go, because we're gonna have a little bit of carryover cooking. So you've got your cheese breads are here, our soup. And here is a final cheese bread product. So you can sprinkle some Parmesan on top if you'd like. The trick is to eat them warm. Otherwise they tend to get a little bit firm. Our soup. So we're gonna add to our soup some of the lime juice, and then we put a little bit more mozzarella on top. We did a few lime wedges, lime slices, some cilantro. You've got your tortilla chips. You could put cheese, more cheese on it, avocado, anything you'd like. So I'm going to take my soup and I'm going to add my lime juice to it. And then I will add, oops, most of my leftover chopped up goodies. And if I wanted to leave some for the garnish on top, I could do that. So I have a little bit left. You can stir that in and your soup is done. Okay, so your soup is ready, your cheese bread's ready, and here's a crepe. There we go. So we'll put this on a plate. And then we will drizzle. So the tricks to crepe folding is you fold it in half once, and then you can put your caramel in the center so we can line it up. On the side. And again, it's totally up to you how much you want to put into there, because this gets pretty sweet. And then we can fold it. You can do a couple of folds. You can go a half, you can do third, you can do it like a what we would call like a funnel shape. And then they typically will serve it to you in a like a package. So you can kind of see the caramel in there. And if you want to get a little bit of caramel on the top to keep that stick down. And then we can squeeze some drizzle Try. It's a little bit cool, so it's not happy with me right now. If I kept it warmer. Yeah, I'm gonna blow out the bag. It's blowing out. So that's like pure caramel. And then I have some whipped topping. And we'll put that across the top. Right? Woo! All right. And finished product. There you go. So, oh, what a fun evening. Thanks for sticking with us. We are really excited to get next semester rolling in the fall. Watch for emails. Watch for all the extra fun things that might come, as well as if you want to ever go back and look at some of the ones we've done this past year, they're on the CTAR website. So you're welcome to go back. Which one? CTAR YouTube, and go back and find any of our recipes from this whole year plus longer, I believe, if we have all of them in place. So you're welcome to always look back at that. We've had an assortment of fun things to do. So happy cooking, everybody. Have a great weekend. Get ready for finals. They're coming up. And what else? Have a great Friday evening. Thanks for cooking with us. Bye.